Much. It's about 16:20, and our session will be taking about 1 hour. And in 1 hour, I will request from the presenters that they will be completing their presentations in 10 to 12 minutes or something like that, so that we can have some time for general interpretations and for the questions from the audience, okay? So we will be first starting with the first presentation. I think one by one, we are going through the program, according to the program. And the first presentation is will be made by Kardelen ERDOGAN, Tactical Urbanism is a Neo-Carnivalesque Experience in Urban Space. Yes, we are now listening to Kardelen. Yes, please.
I am Kardelen ERDOGAN from İzmir University. Today the presentation topic is Tactical Urbanism as a Neo-Carnivalesque Experience in Urban Space. Firstly, I will explain the aim of
I cannot hear anything. Do you hear?
This study argues that Carnival, a special practice of medievality, finds its place in today's CSP tactic. So the study focuses on the possibilities of the tactical urbanism as a carnivalesque act to reconstruct the urban space. In this time, discussing and understanding carnivalesque in order to renew urban space and investigating relation of tactics and carnival are the aim of the study. And thus the study tries to show that tactical urbanism movement is a new carnivalesque practice according to Bakhtin's carnivalesque theory. In this line, first the study explains what is tactical urbanism and then what is carnivalesque. Tactical urbanism is a movement that plans qualified microspatial urban practices and interventions. It brings temporary solutions to urban problems with small scale, low cost functional intervention, usually urban. Tactical urbanism movement, which establishes temporary dominance over urban space, is one of the representative of tactics, one of the key concepts of the circle. And tactics aim to create temporary experiences in urban space and make city an arena for the user. And when it comes to carnivalesque, it's the Bakhtin theory of literary literature based on medieval pattern and its urban order. This theory based on the idea that people perform a carnivalesque act during carnival time by defying authority, like strategy, and investigate carnivalesque attitudes in literature and narrative. Here, the important thing is a unique nature of carnivals and features of carnival. And so, carnival defines a state of action in medieval cities where the people come together at certain times of the year and have fun and understand it that's contrary to the rigid ideology of the period. In carnival, where a free atmosphere against religion, rule, hierarchy, and oppression is created, the public takes an active role and shows their presence in the city with spontaneous action. With these qualities, carnivalesque theory can be adapted to many disciplines in the contemporary sense and offers a rich perspective on the original spatial tactics. It is possible to say that the carnival creates with a different understanding of urbanity. Carnivalesque allows the city and daily life to be experienced in a concrete way and to create an alternative environment and artistic imagery. In other words, adaptation of the carnival to daily life, the place becomes carnivalesque. The carnivalesque space is also being constructed with tactics and tactical urbanism movement today. While looking at the rules of carnival environment and features of tactical urbanism, it is possible to see that there are some common points. The most important thing is rejection of the dictates of the existing order and developing new behaviors, occupations in urban space. Also, both situations remove hierarchy, make equality important. pay attention to participation and anonymity. Being unusual and reveal one's own existence are other important features of them. Instead, these similarities were tried to be revealed with some examples of tactical urbanism from the world and Turkey. Firstly, Sokak Association, Parking Day event, and chair bombing were taken as examples of Neo-Carnivalesque tactics at the streetscape. By changing the purpose of use of the road on the street, it turns the existing urban order upside down, just like at the time of Carnival, and opens the street to Carnivalesque act temporarily and free of social classes. Secondly, about green space intervention, the activation of Roman gardens and the interventions of the urban order team were examined. The interventions show that the city developers have realized own Carnivalesque space by occupying the public space on own initiative. It is a neo-Carnivalesque act to transform the area into a garden by the citizens as a public space without permission from the authorities. Finally, the installations such as Impulse, White Noise, White Light, and Urban Public Library projects were examined. These interventions make citizens visible with a new spatiality understanding and help to participate public life. In other words, these installations represent a neo-Carnivalesque attitude in the urban scale. These examples show us that Carnivalesque theory will help us with tactics in urban space. Carnivalesque theory can evaluate the alternative forms of space production in urban environment. To sum up, tactical urbanism movement is similar with the Carnivalesque attitude in terms of being temporary, anonymous, and spontaneous, ensuring social equality, creating urban awareness, and constructing livable spaces against the existing order. It is expected from this study is to open a new door to the development of Carnivalesque theory for the architecture by revealing today's neo-Carnivalesque practices. Finally, these are references for this study. Thank you for listening.
Dear Aygun, ERDOGAN, I think your microphone is closed, so we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Okay, now just I opened my microphone. Thank you very much for your nice and interesting presentation, so Kardelen. And in fact, I will make a short interpretation, and then later on I will be.
We will tell you about all the
presenter, and then maybe the total. I mean, all the questions will be can be asked at the end of the session, I think, and collectively. Then we will be gathering the questions from the audience at the end of the presentations. And in fact, this was an interesting presentation that informed us about new challenges of urbanism, contrary to classical means for changing the urban space. In this new way of urbanism, the citizens, as the presenter showed us, directly take part in the process of change of urban space against the dominant power or the authority, not maybe the against, but without at least taking the permission from the authority. And in fact, maybe we may reinterpret the humor and chaotic literary accumulation of Gezi events as an example for tactical urbanism. And I would like to ask this as a question to the author, in fact, maybe later you can reply. For can we take it as an tactical urbanism and thus kind of an collective action and so-called urban rebellion as you presented? That's my question, in fact, also to the authors of the presentation. And then we can now may go with the second presentation, which will be made by İdil SENER, Breaking the Boundaries, İzmir Kültürpark Gates. Yes, we are now listening, İdil.
Izmir Kültürpark gates, which we carried out together with Associate Professor Hikmet SENER. I will talk about 5 main headings. İzmir Kültürpark has been used as an important socializing place for the city and its citizens for many years. The area is a social as well as historical event that has been held in 1936 until the fair was moved to the Gaye, not only for the people of Izmir but also for the people living in the immediate vicinity. The entrance and exit to the park, which can be just as a public university, were provided through 5 main gates. Within the scope of the study, it will try to understand the perception of entrance and the gate that has lasted from the day the 5 doors of Kültürpark were used until today. The effect of the gates, which were designed in an architectural style that was the symbol of the political ideology in the first period, will be discussed over here. The purpose of this study is to ask a question and aim to discuss this question rather than developing a method. Although the gate or entrance is a tangible object that enables it to be moved from one place to another. Its definition varies according to time and place. It's possible to define this concept in different ways according to time and people. The entrance gate is an important tool to be similar between 2 different environments. It's a specialized space that is reached through the entrance. This space has been developed and customized according to its function. Transition elements between different spaces always have training. In Turkey, early Republican area, there were significant revolution and improvements, including the transformation of public spaces, through city and rural planning. This period also introduced the concept of well-organized parks to create inclusive spaces for both men and women to engage in various activities, promoting social cohesion and community improvement. Kültürpark came into existence in an area that had become a vast urban void due to the major fire in 1922, primarily inhabited by non-Muslims. It served as a stage where the modernization ideals and ideologies of the newly established republic were reflected. The inspiration for the park came from Fuat Yurdukur, who was influenced by Golf Park in Moscow during his visit to Moscow. The park consists of elements such as a ceremonial area, open-air theaters, swimming pool, restaurants, and museum designed to contribute to the formation of the society envisioned by the newly established state. It refers to Kültürpark as the People's University. It was conceived as a comprehensive educational and social space considered an essential prerequisite for hygienic and modern life. The park main gate that provides entrance and exit to park open the city's 5 radical main roads and squares. As investigates in the danger cross plan, they not only facilitate access to park but also establish its internal-external connection, define its publicity, create a border, and represent the architectural style of the period. The gate of Kültürpark should be regarded as a representation of the ideology of the period and should not be narrowly defined solely as the entrance elements of the area in this context. Gates connect the city and the modern world with the promise of a new life. In Kültürpark, some of the construction between 1930 and 1950 represent economic goals. Some allowed the experience of promised modern life ideals, and some embodied the modernized urban ideals through modern architecture, becoming symbols that left a mark in memory. Kültürpark gates named Lozan Gate, 9 Eylül Gate, Montre Gate, Cumhuriyet Gate, and 26 Ağustos Gate. The name given to these gates are taken from important events that embody the national struggle. In fact, the gates, along with their names, create an intelligible perception of a threshold. The first gate of Kültürpark, the Lozan Gate, designed by Mesut Özil, 1936, provides an entrance entrance to the park with two highlight towers. In 1939, the 9 Eylül Gate, designed by Perin, greets visitors with its concave forms and two stories. The upper floor of the structure houses a casino representing the modern entertainment style. Reflecting the modern architecture understanding of the period, the Montreux Gate was designed by ERDOGAN in the 1950s. Although it's not known exactly when it was designed, the Degenerate Gate was designed by OZGUR in a less magnificent way, in line with the sociological structure of the region where the gate was opened, reflecting the architectural understanding of the period. The Maltostos Gate was opened more recently. In conclusion, during the Republican era in Turkey, public spaces were transferred in line with the goals of the Republic. Well-designed and organized parks were created to reflect the modern face of the Republic. Kültürpark was intended to revitalize the city's economic life and rejuvenate the urban fabric of post-war Izmir. In the 1940s, it was a city podium where people could learn about new plans, have fun, experience the world physically, and socialize. The Kültürpark gates are a representation of the ideology of the area, connecting the city and modernity with the promise of a new life. They are also symbols that remain in memory. Kültürpark, with its carefully planned, design and prominent gates, represent as important symbol of modernity in the Republic's area of Turkey. These are our references, and thank you for listening to.
Thank you very much, İdil, for your nice presentation and informative presentation about the historical gates of Izmir International Fair. And actually, this was an historical examination of the change of urban space and the reflected ideology in the space through the change of historic gates in time. The authors focused on how the ideological basis and functionality of the gates of Izmir International Fair in early Republic period have changed since then, and how this change affected the use of both urban public spaces in both their front and back, the front and back of the gates, of course. And it was an important presentation on how gates played an important role in the history and daily life of the city. I want to ask a question to the authors, if possible, if they visited recently those gates in nowadays. I read some restorations have been made on those gates, I think on the Kuzey Eylül and 26 Ağustos gates recently, and I don't know about the other gates, maybe they were restored previously. And do you think that those restorations protected their architectural originality, or do you think that they don't reflect their historical foundations anymore? And I just want to learn if you have new photos of those gates, I would be happy to see it if you can also show us while you are replying my question at the end of the presentations. Okay, thank you very much. Then we can right now jump to the third presentation, Regenerating Home in a Degenerate Urban Real. Migration is a transformative socio-spatial tool in the case of Basma, İzmir. This is a very near part to the heart of Izmir province, and then it's again an Izmir case study. We will be listening from Perin. Yes, Perin, you can start. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Perin from Yaşar University Department of Architecture. We are very happy to be here. I'm going to talk briefly about our study titled Regenerating Home in a Degenerate Urban Realm. Migration is a transformative socio-spatial tool in the case of Basma, İzmir, which I conducted with my colleague Leman. The content of our presentation. So Basma is the name of an area within the Konak district of Izmir and has been one of the oldest settlement areas of the city, which has been welcoming diverse internal and international migrant populations throughout its urban history, thus having become closely associated with the notion of outsiders. Particularly from the 1950s forward, the area has been stigmatized as a degenerate urban space and turned into a deprived inner city area despite its historic significance. Inspired by its multifaceted history of migration, this study considers Basma as an urban space of migration. In this fashion, the study acknowledges the phenomenon of migration as a transformative socio-spatial tool and inspires to examine the spatial productions of migrants and their efforts of regenerating home in an alienated urban space, or their struggles and sometimes failures in doing so. To achieve this aim, this paper focuses on 3 individual cases located in different parts of Basma, ranging from the most private to the most public one, a courtyard home, a hotel cortege building, and a public park children's playground. Each case provides the study with a particular insight concerning the spatial practices of a different migrant profile, addressing to different spatio-temporal layers of the area, simultaneously converging in the present moment. To accomplish its objective, the study adopts qualitative research methods, mainly ethnographic fieldwork, that involves site observation and semi-structured interviews. The first case is the dwelling of a Syrian migrant family in Pazaryeri neighborhood. The dwelling comprises of a group of structures around a courtyard situated within the borders of an abandoned religious landmark, İplikçi İsmail Dede tomb, dating back to the early 18th century circa. The family has been living there as tenants for over a decade. It is nearly impossible to perceive the courtyard space from the street level, thus making the case the most private and secluded nature within the scope of this study. This private nature is very fragile, though. According to the family members' statements, there had been other individuals interested in this location in the past, but none of them had gone through the trouble of seeking permission to enter. It is noted that the Syrian family have not expressed any opposition to intruders, yet they appear to be apprehensive about it, and they were highly appreciative about us bothering to grant permission first. When one reaches the courtyard level, a series of highly neglected structures, some of which are historical, hanging laundry, and a tall pine tree draw attention. During our visits, we received very warm and hospitable treatment, but we only spent time in the courtyard and we were not invited to take a look inside, emphasizing the value of maintaining personal privacy within one's home, at least within interior spaces. The family's spatial arrangements regarding the utilization of the courtyard include trimming and caring for the pine tree, constructing a pergola to provide shading and planting vines, growing roses and various vegetables in the limited soil area, and using the open space for drying laundry. The remaining jerry-built single-story structures are used by the Syrian family as storage spaces. And here you can see the historic turbe structure at the top. To the right of the courtyard entrance, there is another single-story structure which accommodates some Somali migrants, suggesting a transient arrangement where people come and go frequently. The constant change of residents here is a source of discomfort for the Syrian family. It is clear that they have developed a sense of belonging and ownership towards the entire courtyard area, thus they are not pleased with sharing the space with others. The second case, Manisa Akhisar Hotel, is a hotel in an old cortege building in Kurtuluş neighborhood. It is located on Anafartalar Street, the most prominent commercial axis in the area. Cortejos first emerged in the Jewish quarter in the Basma area as a communal housing typology that accommodated low-income Jewish populations. These structures were constructed by Sephardic Jews who were forcibly migrated from Spain and Portugal to the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century. Cortejos typically comprise individual living units and shared spaces organized around a central courtyard characterized by an inward-facing architectural layout that emphasizes the necessity of residing together while maintaining separation from the surrounding neighborhood. They are remarkable examples of spaces of migration in Basma, of which only a few survive to this day. Manisa Akhisar Hotel is one of them. Accessing the building is an interesting experience. It involves navigating through an exceedingly narrow passage from Anafartalar Street. Upon entering the courtyard, silence prevails. Apart from the housekeeper, there is no one around. Along the long eastern side of the courtyard, laundry hangs. The place is more of a retreat than a hotel, despite being in the heart of the city. The hotel seems to have stretched, much like its guests. It's as if it has stood still in time. Following the migration of Jewish community from Turkey, particularly in the years after the establishment of Israel in 1948, the new occupants of the cottages became low-income Turkish citizens, mostly domestic migrants. Manisa Akhisar Hotel had been accommodating those who have stayed there for many years, up until very recently. Presently, the establishment is closed and is not accepting guests due to licensing issues. The third and final case of the study, the Agora Park, is a public park and children's playground located in Yeni neighborhood. It's the opposite neighbor of the Agora of Smyrna. It is also very close to the main road, Eşref Paşa Boulevard. Situated in such a central location in the area where parks and recreational spaces are scarce, the Agora Park stands as a prominent public space regularly visited by both local Basmane residents and members of migrant communities. In 2019, the park was known for having been hosted a certain number of Afghan refugees. And currently, it is a gathering, socializing space for migrants from African countries, as well as a playground and socializing space for Syrian and Turkish national children and mothers. In addition to providing a secure urban public space for children to play, interact, and enjoy fresh air, the Agora Park serves as a meeting and socialization spot for Syrian mothers. The Agora Park becomes a means for them to rebuild a sense of belonging towards the area, thereby regenerating a piece of home within the oftentimes challenging host community. As our final remarks, the courtyard home to a Syrian family for more than a decade, and also temporary accommodation for Somali migrants, displays domestic and international migrant groups, ways of coexistence and tolerance between formality and informality, permanence and temporariness, home and homelessness, and identity and anonymity, and also reveals the fragility of the privacy of migrants' home. Our second case, Manisa Akhisar Hotel, is not just a hotel, but home to many domestic migrants for decades, a continuation of communal life practices of Sephardic Jews dating back centuries. And our final case, the Agora Park, is a gathering, socialization, play area for different migrant groups, as well as occasionally a shelter space for irregular migrants. And lastly, we put everything together in this table. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
I open my microphone. Yes, thank you very much, Perin, for your nice and interesting Gaye presentation. In fact, this presentation was also from Izmir, and it is just right to the south of the Kültürpark that İdil Ece has presented already, and it's directly goes into the located in the heart of the city. And I think you used ethnographic and other qualitative techniques, and as far as I read from your abstract, and from a spatio-temporal perspective, you considered Basmane as an urban space of migration and a place of transition point for all kinds of migrants throughout centuries. And also how these migrants changed the space in social, cultural, and economic ways. And your presentation was, in fact, important to remind us that, and An important aspect of the migration that our country has been exposed, especially during the last decades, that's the requirement of a certain new spatial reinterpretation of space. I wonder, I just have two questions to you, if you can reply. Have you ever asked those migrants that if they, for instance, find a secure place in their own countries, and will they be going back to when they find such secure places? And the other question is, especially for the first two cases of your presentation, the owners are aware of that their homes and their hotels are occupied by the foreigners, by the migrants. Do they know that? Do the owners don't know this situation? And these were my questions for your presentation. And then we can just jump into the last presentation, which will be made by Ozlem Özbek. Again, another migration issue, but the case area is now different from the historical peninsula, Fatih district. I think one of the most migrants attracting place in the big metropole, in the biggest metropole of our country, and then its neighborhood from Fatih'sMolla neighborhood, reading the effects of migration on everyday life, Fatih'sMolla's Gürani neighborhood. Yes, we are now listening our presenter, Ozlem Naz.
I'll be sharing our research, reading the effects of migration on spaces of everyday life, and be focusing on Syrian migration and Fatih'sMolla Gürani neighborhood as our case study. This is the structure that I will be following during the presentation. It's essential to see the concept of migration not only as a matter of physical mobility, but also as a psychological and socio-cultural means to better oneself. The cultural interactions that emerge as an inevitable consequence of migration change urban space and the everyday lives of migrants and urbanites. As one of the unexpected factors influencing the city, migration leads to cultural and spatial changes and transformations. In this regard, our research explores the ruptures that migration in Istanbul creates regarding culture and urban space. Specifically, we aim to investigate how the everyday life practices of migrants contribute to altering the urban landscape. Additionally, we intend to identify the motives through which these changes can be analyzed, providing a comprehensive understanding of the dynamic relationship between migration, culture, and urban space in Istanbul. Now let's go over the literature quickly. These are the terms that I'll be referring throughout the presentation. We refer to migration as a period sufficient to create a meaningful distance and impact. Culture is the way of life of people. Every society is different from each other. They reflect these differences in their everyday lives through culture. For this reason, traces of culture can be sought in everyday life. Due to the mobility of the globalizing city, this multicultural environment in which cultures interact, and as a result, the juxtaposition of culture, allows new special definitions to be generated for the city. As a way of integration in society, belonging to a society consists of social, cultural, and spatial dimensions. According to Ralph, space is not just a geometry, but a place that is experienced, and therefore this experience should be explored to understand space. As a study of culture and space, analyzing streets as everyday life spaces through the issue of appropriation and sense of belonging, the objective of this research aims to discuss the changes in urban space with the phenomenon of migration and cultural interactions. These are closely affecting society and cities. This research focuses on the migration movements that reflect the tensions and conflicts in the Middle East in 2011 and beyond, and the spaces of everyday life affected by these movements. Thus, migrants coming to Istanbul have articulated with the existing cultural fabric visible through everyday life spaces. Then, how is the street seen? What does it reveal? Became our hypothesis. Qualitative research, rooting its findings through cognitive mappings, research collected data from online Street View archives between 2011 and 2023, and site analysis was undertaken. According to census study through years, we see that they mainly moved in Esenyurt and Fatih. The main reason for choosing Molla Gürani neighborhood as the study area is that it's located within the borders of the Fatih district, where physical, social, cultural layers were formed within the historical texture and hosts various groups. Its location in an area bounded by Vatan and Millet streets, considered the city's main transportation axis, makes the neighborhood suitable for research due to the diversity and accessibility of everyday life spaces. The insufficiency of research on this topic in this region has also led to its selection as a subject. We have this timeline to see the migration milestones. I won't go over all of them, but the Arab Spring and Syrian civil war is important and the beginning of the Syrian immigration in Turkey. We know that Syrian refugees started to arrive after 2011, which is increased after the escalation of war that ended up as an international refugee crisis in 2015. And in 2016, Turkey and Syria border have become deteriorated. Even though Turkey created a barrier neighborhood close to the border, Syrians started to seek better life conditions, which mainly focuses on metropolitan region, for example, Istanbul. In the case study, the neighborhood has been divided into different sections with axes. Along the same axis, a morphological analysis of the spaces on the facade and ground level has been made from 2011 to 2023. The consumption of the street as a space of everyday life has increased over time in dense and sparse axes with the population of people in the city. The presence of the migrants and the process of appropriating the space is ensured through eating and drinking habits, and through these places where culture can be manifested. Language also is a tool that distinguishes cultures. The reflection of language on the facades, the presence of writings only in the immigrant language can be read as an indication that the immigrant draws his borders, closes himself to interaction, shows his presence to those who are not his own, but accepts only what is his own. This situation may initiate a debate that leads to social segregation and the occupation of the locals. As a result of the examinations made on the determined axis, the following table has been prepared to show the findings of the experiential and spatial changes in the years after the migration phenomenon. The neighborhood today reveals itself in a new language of communication through its signs, ads, odor, sound, mixed languages, administrative offices, real estate markets, educational facilities, catering to immigrants, and spaces of everyday life in general. As a space of everyday life, the street can be defined from a new perspective as interactive spaces that create possibilities that allow interaction for urbanites, having not sharp and clear boundaries. They may create an alternative language that can adapt to dynamic processes and situations. As a future work, following questions: what can be done to transform the consumption of context into a more inclusive potential by creating a pluralistic spatial language? And how can integration in society and space be made possible? Can be asked and further investigated.
Yes, thank you very much for this very colorful and very visually effective presentation. And in fact, from the case of Molla Gürani neighborhood in Fatih district, again, this presentation considered the socio-spatial transformation of urban space through process of migration. But this time, I think the authors take more positive sides of the acculturation process between migrants and local residents, as far as I observed from your presentation and from your abstract. and also how space impacts this process in turn. Yeah, I mean, the space also impacted the migrants' lifestyles, and also migrants' effective. That's why the socio-spatial transformation is a two-side process. And again, qualitative approach is used in the study. And it was important for us to remind once more the migration we have been exposed is certainly not only a concept of physical mobility, but also a psychological and a social cultural phenomenon, of course. My question is that, again, a similar one to if you have already contacted the migrants themselves directly, do you observe any indication for them to go back if they have some secure place in their country? And also, have you ever observed that if there have been some, again, a kind of friction between the two different societies of the Turkish society and also the migrant society, and what were the reasons for that friction, if there have been any? These were my questions again for the last presentation. And now we have finished our presentations, and I think we totally have. Do we have any outsider, any audience except our own presenters and our own? I don't think, Barış, right?
We have 6 participants, I think.
Really? Okay, then we can ask those 6 participants if they have any questions to any presentations, and then if they tell that which presenter they are asking, they will be asking their questions, it will be fine, so that we don't lose time.
Maybe yes. They can raise their hands, and
sure.
I can give them a microphone permission.
Yes. Sure. Please raise your hand and then ask your questions if you have any.
Or maybe they can write Q&A part.
Yes, I think we have Ayşegül, Başak, Hande, Nilgün Hoca, yes, İlhan Vural Hoca, Ömer İskender Hoca, and Sebla Arın. Okay. We are expecting questions from the audience. I think, do we have any question written on the chat box? Not, I think. Okay, do we have any questions from our academicians and from, I think, students or other audience?
Aygun Hocam, in the meantime, maybe we can answer your questions.
Sure. Yeah, it will be. We
can start, Leman and I. As for your first question, actually, we didn't ask the question of, if you find a secure and safe place, do you want to go back to your country? Because, we are more interested in their spatial practices here rather than, their return story or things like that. But we know that we have information about it. We know that, from the literature also and from our observation that they're also not comfortable, living in the Basmane area. They don't find it the ideal place to live either. They want to move. They want to move to the other regions of the city. They find it unsafe and chaotic, and especially for the multi-children families, they want to move, but they just don't have the means to do so, so they keep staying there. So that's the case for most of them, we can say. And as for your second question, are the owners aware of this? You called it occupation, but the thing is actually, for instance, for our first case, for the courtyard case, the Syrian family, there are tenants for more than a decade.
Okay,
They
I
are,
just missed that.
maybe I, skipped in the presentation, but it's in the paper. So there is this tenancy relationship between the, there is a homeowner and they are the tenants, and they, they really have built a sense of belonging and sense of ownership towards their home there. So they take care of it, and they say proudly, we are here for more than 10 years now. And we actually interviewed one of the daughters of the house, and she was underage, but she, she gave us a lot of information. And yeah, she was born in Izmir, actually. She was born in Turkey, and her Turkish was, extremely fluent, and, she talks just like us, and they are kind of locals, now there, at least in that area. So, and as for our second case, the Manisa Kisar Hotel, the domestic migrants, consider that place as home. There's this strange relationship. They are some cast out people, cast out from the society, and they have been living there for, decades. And there's that relationship there. And as our final case, the occupation actually occurred in the Agora Park by the Afghan refugees, but their fate was, to be detained and sent to the removal center, and then, sınır dışı. Yeah. There's that occupation incident there, but yeah, the Afghan refugees are mostly, detained and sent back. That's their case.
Will not be allowed to stay there anymore. Okay.
Yeah. But the case is totally different for the Syrian migrants, because they are, they live here under the temporary protection status given by the government. So their status is completely different. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Other authors also can reply to save time.
Maybe I can answer your question. Actually, you are right about your comment, because tactical urbanism refers to softer actions here for my example. These are in small scales, but carnivals are stronger actions, and it have a rebellion, as you said, and its nature is affects all public space. But here I try to introduce the concept more and use Neo-Carnivalesque because of this small scale difference. And but the study is in developing process. So thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, other authors?
I can answer your question actually. You ask the present Gates photos, but I don't have any photos for the restorative photos. But I can say, as I know, they did the restoration for the original.
Then fine. Okay. Yes, the final question.
Yes, now I can answer your question, I think, about why, actually, let's say we interviewed some of them, and they said they came here because of the bad conditions in their country and the war. But we see that it's a long process since 2011 to 2023, and they say as the time passed, they acquired new professions here, and they started to integrate themselves in the everyday life in Istanbul. And even they now started to prefer their life spaces in Başakşehir. They keep their workplaces and some meeting points still in Fatih. And yes.
Okay, thank you very much for your replies. I really very satisfied with the answers. And then if we don't have, I think we have 10 minutes more, but I don't think we have any more questions from the audience, right, Barış?
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay, then we again, once more, thank you very much. Thank you all the presenters for their very informative and interesting presentations about the real questions of our everyday life and in our cities where we live, in our country, in different parts of the country, especially the metropolitan areas, and which are mostly exposed to this migration questions or things that needs to urban tactics maybe will be the new way of means for changing the urban space. And many interesting concepts and phenomena have been introduced in these presentations. So thank you very much for your efforts and for your works, and I wish you all the success with your continuation of your studies. Okay, then we can close, I think, our...
yeah, I am stopping the record. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much again, all of you.
Thank you very much again for all the presenters. Bye-bye.
Thank you.